I was just day in and day out exhausted and pushing myself to the limit and trying to build these connections with the people around me and win these competitions, which are extremely taxing mentally and physically. And the fact that I could get through that, get all the way to the end and be only a few votes shy of winning $1 million, it just showed me that, like, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Hi, I'm Karen Horting, Executive Director and CEO at the Society of Women Engineers. Welcome to Diverse, a SWE podcast. Today's guest, Eva Erickson, is an engineer, athlete, and advocate. Eva is a Ph.D. candidate in engineering at Brown University who recently competed on season 48 of Survivor, where she was runner-up and also became the first openly autistic contestant in the show's history. She also made history as the first and only woman to play on the men's club hockey team at Georgia Institute of Technology, and now is the captain of the men's club hockey team at Brown University. Eva, to say I'm excited to hear about your journey is an understatement. We want to hear about what it's like to compete on Survivor and how your authenticity has shaped your path. So welcome to Diverse.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was quite the intro. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
So for our listeners who are just meeting you, we always like to jump in at the very beginning. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got interested in STEM and this path you're on right now?
Yeah, so I'm Eva. I'm from Minnesota, and I grew up spending a ton of time on lake at my cabin. I mean, Minnesota's a land of 10,000 lakes. I was always out there. And what really made me want to get into engineering was so strange is that my uncle had a sea kayak that had pedals that would have these flippers on the bottom that would flap like the swimming of a penguin. And I loved animals and was so good at math. And now learning that there were people that had studied how an animal, a penguin, had swam to then make this really cool kayak, it just was like, okay, like that's what I want to do. I want to use my like math and science mind to then connect to the animal kingdom. And so I wanted to pursue a bachelor's in physics at Georgia Tech, where I studied physics of living systems. And so I initially worked in a lab that focused a lot on biomechanics and locomotion. And I actually studied how centipedes traverse complex terrains. And so I was working on a bio-inspired system with live animals and getting to analyze that from a physics perspective and really loved that. And then when I finished my undergrad, I wanted to continue working in this bio-inspired sector and decided to get my Ph.D. And I was recruited to a lab at Brown here where I am studying how seals use their whiskers to locate objects in water and how that can be implemented in sensory tech for the Navy. And so I'm getting my Ph.D. in fluid and thermal science engineering here and have been really enjoying doing that bio-inspired work as well.
Well, I love that. And I have to drill down a little bit because I think sometimes when you're figuring out what you want to do, it's often hard to connect what you're passionate about with the career opportunities. So I'm just curious about how you went about researching how to kind of marry that all together to then end up at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I just kind of started Googling stuff and was like animal physics. Like I love math, I love physics and loved animals. And so it was kind of like looking into random different labs and research. And I actually came across the lab that I ended up working in at Georgia Tech in one of my Google searches. And they had this really cool research on sidewinding snakes. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. I want to go work in that lab. So I started reading these research papers that were like way above my like level of understanding at the time and got really interested in it. So then that was the whole reason I applied to Georgia Tech. And right once I got there as a freshman, I marched right over to the professor's office and was like, hi, like, I really want to work in your lab. And he was like, oh, we don't take freshmen. And I convinced him that like, hey, I've read these papers. One of my gifts with my autism is that I'm extremely good at math. So I had already completed all of my college math well in middle and high school. And so I had a bit higher understanding level than most freshmen. And so he was like, okay, we'll give you a shot. And that was kind of my first step into this area that then has led me on quite the path here. And it was really great to find something that interested me from both like the science interest as well as the like my real life love of animals and nature.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of times confidence is an issue for our members, especially while they're still getting their undergrad or, they get into the first job. But it sounds like you knew what you wanted and you were like, I'm just going to go ask. Did you have a mentor early on or a role model that kind of helped you build that confidence, or has that just always been innate?
That's just part of who I am. I mean, another gift with my autism is that I am not aware of what other people are thinking and feeling, which can be really tough and hard in some situations. Like I can't read social cues, but also it's allowed me to be 100% myself. And when I want something, I really get fixated on that goal and I get after it. And so I do all those little things of like, what am I going to do to get to that next level, to get what I want? And so I think that's just kind of having that drive and passion and not worrying about like, oh, like, is this going to be weird? Like, am I being a freshman? Are they going to look down on me? Like, no, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to prove that I belong here and that I can do it.
I love that. Yeah, I just heard a little snippet interview with Reese Witherspoon lately where she was talking about somebody that had asked her for career advice. And she's like, it's not about following your dream. It's about following what you're good at. And it sounds like that's what you've really done. Like you've mirrored what you're passionate about, but also, like you said, I was great at math. And so I'm marrying those two together.
Yeah. So it was really cool to go from that, like being like, oh, I'm really passionate about animals and how I can use my skills to then fit into that area. And now as I'm finishing my PhD and looking towards what I want to do next, my other biggest passion is sports. And now I have this biomechanics background, biophysics. I want to translate those skills that I have from my physics research and engineering work that I've done in my PhD to then work in hockey analytics. And so once again, finding what like makes me excited and what skills do I have and how can I combine those things?
So you're going to be like the Moneyball of hockey.
Exactly. But more on a physics standpoint, not just stats.
Okay. All right, good. So switching gears a little bit, you stepped away from your PhD research for a little while to compete on season 48 of Survivor. So, which is not something most graduate students in STEM do. So can you say a little bit about what made you say yes to this opportunity?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many things. It's such an adventure and once in a lifetime opportunity. And going to Fiji, like the only time I'd left the country had been to go to Canada before this. And so the competitive arena that you get to compete on national television in a huge physical task and mental task and social competition in so many ways, Survivor just really drew me in. And so I was so excited to take that chance and was very, very lucky that my PI, the head of my lab here at Brown, like supported me in that I was able to take a month off of my PhD and go do this big journey. And the only thing he asked of me was that I at some point mentioned vortices on national television. And I was like, they edit it. Like, how am I going to know what they'll show? And luckily at the end, I got to reveal that I was an engineer, which is something I had hid through the whole season. And when I revealed that I was a PhD student, I said exactly what my research was in and studying vortex-induced vibrations. And he was very proud of me on that. So it was great that I had the support of my lab going out there to do this huge, amazing competition.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as you went through the competition, and I just rewatched the last episode, and you were breaking codes and things, how much do you think your STEM background played into some of the success that you had on the show?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of just like puzzles out there and using your brain in different ways when you're depleted. And certainly like being depleted in lab work for grinding for 12 hours on an experiment is different than starving for 26 days. But, there's been a lot of like work under pressure and just having that analytical mindset where I'm working the numbers, like where are the votes at, this and that. And so just that ability to kind of think on your feet, and that really helped. And yeah, the puzzles, like doing the word puzzles, I was very good at that. That's something I have a lot of experience with playing Scrabble, but there weren't any number puzzles my season. And those are like my wheelhouse. So I was a little disappointed there, but like the problem solving skills definitely come in handy.
Yeah. It's like, where are the math word problems?
Yeah.
And after being on the show, is there any lessons you walked away with or things you learned about yourself that you think are going to play into your STEM journey?
Just definitely that like confidence in myself that it's like I can do hard things. Like that was a massive undertaking to go out there to starve for 26 days. I lost 25 pounds. I was just day in and day out exhausted and pushing myself to the limit and trying to build these connections with the people around me and win these competitions, which are extremely taxing mentally and physically. And the fact that I could get through that, get all the way to the end, and be only a few votes shy of winning $1 million. It just showed me that like, if I can do that, I can do anything. And so just knowing that I can continue to push myself to the limits in the lab, to the limits in my life, and just whatever I want to achieve, I can get after it because I know that I have that grind and dedication in my heart and can get there.
Yeah, I'm guessing there will be some challenges now that will seem small as compared to like the physical challenges of the competition.
Yeah, I mean, the physical challenges out there, the competing in like the challenges where you can win immunity, that's one thing. But the hardest thing was the not being able to eat and just living out in the jungle. And that's something you really have to adjust and push through. But I just adjusted to it and it became my normal like day to day. And so recognizing that like, hey, in your regular life, like things can be tough, but you have this ability to adjust and adapt. Adaptability is a really important thing for anyone in whatever career they're following. And so it's a bit different adapting on an island than adapting to a real world, like day-to-day hard situation. But it's the same kind of principles that just being versatile and adapting to your surroundings will make you succeed.
Yeah, great. Well, I mentioned early on that you were the first openly autistic cast member of the show. So can you share a little bit more about that and how maybe did that present challenges in terms of building those relationships or maybe how it worked to your advantage?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was very young with autism, and it's always been something that has impacted me in my life, but I just wasn't super open about it all the time. And now going on Survivor, this has now been something that I've stepped into a role where I get to speak about autism a lot. And as I was coming onto the show, I knew that I didn't want to share my diagnosis immediately with people because I'm not good at reading social cues. I will sometimes miss things. I can't tell when people are lying. And that's really tough in a game that's all about lying. But I am a very social person and I'm great at making friends and connections. But I also get overstimulated sometimes. And that's something that is really impactful with my autism is that I can get very overwhelmed from stimulus. And that's something that I expected could happen in this game where I was in this very strange and new environment. And so I opened up to one person about my autism, and that person was Joe Hunter. He's an amazing man, and he really accepted me and wanted to understand and learn and know how he could help me if a situation would arise. And so building that support system was something really important because then later when I did get overwhelmed, I had the support I needed. I had advocated for it early and then was able to use that to my advantage later. And then when I opened up to everyone and shared my diagnosis with the whole cast, I received so much support that people were like, oh, we understand you better now. And things that had been misinterpreted before, they recognized that like, oh, that was just because you can't read social interactions the same way. And the one thing that a lot of people worry about with when they reveal they have autism is that people will think that they're weak or lesser. But I had the exact opposite response, that these people saw how strong I was, that I go through these challenges day in and day out, and I can persevere and get through them, that this is part of who I am. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so seeing that reflected in all these people was so impactful. And then carrying that into the real world too, and spreading this message that autism is something that gives you many strengths, but it also gives you many challenges, and learning to balance those and live a full life is something that anyone with autism can do and achieve.
Yeah, I love that message. And so let me ask you, Eva, what can we do to be better allies for the neurodivergent community?
I think it's really just that being understanding and ready to listen, because a lot comes on the person themselves. Like if I open up to someone about my autism, that's my choice. You can't be forced into it. You know, like you don't want to call someone out and be like, oh, are you on the spectrum? Like that's not like a great way to go about trying to connect with someone who is neurodiverse. But if someone comes to you with their diagnosis that they have autism, ADHD, any other invisible disability, just being ready to learn and understand and ask that, what can I do to support you? And that's what's really key. And I am so glad to get to have this opportunity to share my story with others and inspire people to do the same, because for so long, so many people have kept that inside and not wanted to share. But by just being open allies and being understanding, you can really make a difference in the lives of those people.
Yeah. Listen, learn, ask. Those seem like really easy things that we can do to support the community.
Absolutely.
So you've spent a lot of time in some male-dominated environments, not just STEM, but also hockey. So can you talk a little bit about your hockey career? I mean, we were talking earlier, you're from Minnesota. So, okay, now it's all making sense. It's like the national pastime there. But talk a little bit about how you claim your place in these spaces.
Yeah, I grew up playing hockey in Minnesota, my favorite thing in the world. And when I was heading off to Georgia Tech, my dream school, they only had a men's hockey team there. And just like going into the lab being like, I'm a freshman and they don't take freshmen, it's the same kind of thing where going into the hockey team where, okay, it's a men's team and I'm a girl and they've never had that before. I'm going to prove that I belong here. And this is something I want, so I'm going to go after it. And yeah, it was really tough at first. Like I had to try out like everyone else. And a few guys got cut and I made the team. And so there was a little bit of animosity where it's like, oh, like, why is she here? I'm smaller than everybody. And it's a different game. The men's game is very fast compared to the women's. And so I had to adjust and get better. And I definitely did. And I stepped up and I earned the respect of my teammates. And not only that, but I earned their friendship too. Like I became very close with all these guys and they recognized that like I love the game probably more than anyone else out there and will do anything to get to play. And so just showing that passion and day in and day out putting in the work that like I am going to work as hard as I can to prove to them and prove to myself that I can do this. And I did. And that was really great. And then coming to Brown being like, okay, now I have to start all over again. It's another men's team and I have to show that like I belong. It was a lot quicker this time because I had that extra confidence of like, I've done this. I've been through it. I know that I can. And so it only took a couple weeks before I was like totally in my element and like, yeah, I can run this team. I got this. And now they selected me as captain for the past 2 years here. And so that really just goes to show that like, yeah, I'm a woman playing a men's sport, which hockey is a lot of times not necessarily the most accepting environment, but I've come in and I've broken down those barriers and we have this awesome group of guys who respect me as an athlete and a leader.
And I have to ask, tell me about the hockey survivor drinking game.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's how I got into Survivor is that my teammates at Georgia Tech, we would do a whole night where we would come up with all these drinking game challenges, which were just your like regular drinking games. And we'd split into tribes and then compete like Survivor, where if your team lost a challenge, you had to vote somebody out and we'd have a merge and do this whole thing, like playing beer pong and stat cup and the whole shebang. And the first time that we played, I actually won. And so that was kind of the guys were like, oh, well, if you can win this, like you should do the real thing. And I did the real thing, but didn't win that.
Yeah, I'm sensing that like you get a challenge and you're all in.
Oh, 100%. I'm so competitive.
Yeah, I have that same streak as well. So you said women's hockey a little bit slower than the men's game, but come on, the women's US team.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing.
How exciting was that to watch their run in Milan?
Absolutely loved it. It's so amazing to see just that team come together, which is so many young players too. And that's the next generation of women's hockey players. A lot of them are still in college and seeing that, like how the game has grown. And yeah, the women's game is different than the men's and it's always going to be like that. But that doesn't mean that the women's game isn't phenomenal, especially at that level where it is just the best players in the world competing at the top of their game. So loved watching that. And it always makes me so mad when people tell me that they're like, oh, you play men's hockey. You could go play in the P-Dub. Like you could go play with them. I'm like, no, playing men's hockey, like for college club is very different than the best female athletes in the world. And so I just want to put that right there. Like, yes, the game is different and I had to get better to play with men, but these women are phenomenal players. I could never stick with them. Their hands, their reading of the game, they're fantastic. I love it.
I love that women's sports is finally starting to have a moment because it is so amazing. And for so long, it was, sort of secondary to men's sports. So it's great to see some of these athletes, finally being elevated and there being attention to women's sports because all little girls should know that they can pursue sports just like their male counterparts.
Yeah, I grew up going to Minnesota Gopher games, watching the women play because my dad wanted me to have female hockey role models to look up to, not just the NHL. And there wasn't the pro league for women at the time. And so going to those games, I really idolized those players and was like, I want to grow up and be like them. And now girls, like, they don't have to just go to college games to watch like female role models. They can go to actual pro games. That's so big for the sport. So I love that.
So for women who are listening, who are, either pursuing their degrees or they're already in the profession, sometimes it feels like they have to choose between being engineers or following big, bold goals, kind of like you did. You're doing both. You're getting your Ph.D., you took time off to do Survivor, you're playing men's hockey. you're following a lot of your passions. So what would you say to any of our listeners who are like, gosh, I don't know. I feel like I have to choose.
Yeah, that's something that I've always like firmly been against is like, I'm not going to just do one thing. Like there are so many things that I'm excited about in my life. And I know that I want to live my life to the fullest. And so to do that, I don't want to cut out the things that I care about. So like, yes, I'm super passionate about my research and being a PhD student in engineering, and that's awesome, but that's not all of who I am. So much of what makes me me is these other things that I do this autism advocacy work, and I'm really excited about that, that I get to play hockey, my favorite thing in the world. And not only that, I'm also officiating NCAA women's hockey and loving that. Like I have all these other areas, and it's all just about time management. And so like, no, you do not want to like burn yourself out and run ragged trying to do all these things, but prioritize what's important to you and find the things that make you happy. Because for me, just being in the lab all the time was not going to make me happy. And so I'm going to be more successful as an engineer if I can have those other times to kind of de-stress and enjoy something else. That makes me then stay reinvigorated in my work day to day in the lab. And so I think that being able to manage your time and recognize the signs in yourself for when you're feeling burned out, that's like the important thing here. Like you don't have to choose. You can do it all as long as you manage yourself properly.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Eva, thank you so much. I am so energized from this conversation. Thank you so much for openly sharing your passions and how you got to where you are today. Just based on this conversation, I know that you are going to outwit, outplay, and outlast as an engineer. So thank you for being with us today and being our guest on Diverse.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And for all of us at SWE, thanks for listening.